Zat Hashem, today in Masechet Shabbat, we are starting the very bottom of Lamed Gimel Amud Aleph, the two dots. We'll go back to the last piece we did yesterday, the second to last line. Tanu Abanan Dalet Simanim Hen. We're going to have two sections in today's learning. The first is a continuum of what we've been discussing, which is certain avirot and certain punishments that are associated with it. And then the end of the Gemara, the last half of today, which will carry us to the Mishnah, God willing, on Lamed Daled Amud Aleph, is the famous story of Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai, Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai, in the cave where he had to run away. Famous story, a lot of secrets in this Gemara, obviously. And Bezrat Hashem will try to go through it and understand the story. So let's get started here. Lamed Gimel Amud Aleph, the two dots, second to last line on the page. Tanu Abanan. Everybody see, we did this yesterday, this last piece. We'll just go over it again because it really ties into the next piece. Tanu Abanan, says the Braita. Dalet simanim hein. There are four things that are simanim. Means there are four things that when you see these bad things in a person, these it's like onshim, these punishments, it's a sign that they were involved in a certain avera. That's what it is. What is it? Simin la'avera is hidroken. So the first one, which we were speaking more about yesterday, is if someone's involved in avera, arayot, things like that, hidroken. Hidroken, we said, it's called dropsy. It's like swelling of the body. So that's one of the things. We said also it could be for other reasons, but it has different types of hidroken also. Simin l'sinat chinam irakon. The sign that someone has sinat chinam is irakon. It's called jaundice in English, yellowing. It's like the baby's born sometimes.
Like hepatitis?
I don't know if it's hepatitis. I don't know. I know that it's called jaundice, and or the babies sometimes are a little yellow. That's why they push off the brit, for example. Siman legasot haruach aniyut. The sign of a ga'ava, gasot haruach, is poverty. It's poverty. It's being poor. So Rashi says aniyut here does not mean poor with money. Aniyut b'Torah, which makes a lot of sense because we know the only one who could really study. Well, the only one who could really learn Torah is somebody who's humble. So therefore, if you see somebody's Bal Ga'ava, if he's not a Talmid Chacham, that's the way to say it really. The other way is, if you see somebody who's lacking in Torah, it's probably because he's not an Anav, meaning it goes hand in hand, these two things. And Siman Lashon Hara is Askera. The sign that someone spoke Chas v'Shalom Lashon Hara is Askera. Now this Askera we're going to speak about now. In English it's called diphtheria. Diphtheria. Diphtheria, it's an illness, Rashi explains. It begins inside the person, and then it travels up towards his throat, towards his throat, and it causes him to choke and die like on his own fluids. Like it's a terrible disease.
That's what happened to Rabbi Akiva's Talmidim.
That's what happened to Rabbi Akiva's Talmidim, where Yavama says. So the point is, why is that for Lashon Hara? Because again, it's a disease that causes your Lashon, the whole throat and speaking area, to be swelled up and to not be able to breathe, associated with negative speech. So this brings us to the next sugya now. Tanu Abanan, says the Braita. Askera, this terrible disease of Askera, Ba'al Olam, it comes to the world. Lamed Gimel Amud Bet, Ala Ma'aser. So Rashi explains, if a person eats ma'asrot that are not metukanim, means he eats fruits, tevel, when they haven't taken off trumot and ma'asrot, he's doing an avera associated with the mouth. So the punishment is askera, which is a disease that is also associated with the mouth and with the organs, right? Rabbi Lazar Rabbi Yossi Omer, Rabbi Lazar Rabbi Yossi says, Lashon Hara. He says, no, askera comes because of Lashon Hara. Now, the Gemara says, Amar Rav V'item Rabbi Shua ben Levi. Micro, where do we find a pasuk that implies Lashon Hara could cause this terrible disease? So pasuk in Tehillim, David HaMelech says like this, V'amelech ismach belokim. The king will rejoice with Hashem. Italel kol hanishba bo. He will praise all that swear by Hashem. Means all that swear in Hashem's name. He praises those people. Ki sacher pi dovre sheker. So, what does it mean? Because the mouths of those who speak sheker, falsehoods, is closed up. So the way Rashi explains it is, David HaMelech was saying, the way the Mefarshim explained the pasuk is that those who are telling Shaul HaMelech bad things about me and making him hate me, they should be quiet. But the way the drasha is, ki sacher could mean, it's the same shoresh as askera. Choke, it's askera. So it means, dovre sheker, those people who speak lashon hara, wrong, terrible things, they chas v'shalom could receive the punishment of askera. Now the Gemara wants to know the following. Gibailu, there's a question. The Tanakama of the Braita said maaser is what causes. If you don't take off maaserot, you eat fruits that are tevel, causes askera. Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Yossi said lashon hara. The question is Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Yossi being mosif on the Tanakama, or is he cholek on the Tanakama? There's two ways to look at it. Either he's saying also lashon hara can cause it, or he's saying only lashon hara can cause. So Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Yossi al lashon hara ka'amar. He's dafka saying lashon hara causes askera, but not the other avera of eating fruits that are tevel. But dilma afa lashon hara nami ka'amar means to say eating perot of tevel and also lashon hara. So the Gemara says the way we can answer this is based on a story. Tashma, let's bring a proof from a story. It's very interesting, the storyline here. We know that originally the Sanhedrin was not in Yavne, but the Chachamim went to learn there, to study there, and Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, this is around the time of Churban Bayit Sheni, he got permission from the Romans, Ten li Yavne v'chachameha, right? The Gemara in Gittin tells us that we're going to destroy the Beit HaMikdash, lo aleinu, to kill out Jews and everything. Ten li Yavne v'chachameha, that was one of his requests. He said, please, I want to keep the Chachamim, I need that. So the rabbis went, and I saw RSbY says a fascinating footnote here. The Romans wouldn't have been happy for them to reestablish the Sanhedrin like it was. Sanhedrin used to sit in a semicircle, like a moon shape. That's how they used to sit before. What? Like a half circle, semicircle.
Okay.
So when when they established the Sanhedrin in Yavne, they called it Kerem b'Yavne. What's Kerem? It's a vineyard. Kmo Kerem. It was in rows. Rows looked more like a Beit Midrash than a Sanhedrin.
What's a rose?
In shurot.
Oh.
Shurot, in rows.
Oh, rows.
Why did they do that? Because they didn't want the Romans to realize that they're being Kovea Sanhedrin there. Because the Romans wouldn't be happy. They don't want the Jews to have a Sanhedrin. So they set it up in a way that it was in shurot, like a Kerem. A shinoi that they wouldn't realize, but really it was the Sanhedrin. They moved the Sanhedrin to Yavne. So the rabbis were sitting in Kerem b'Yavne, that's what it was called, Kerem in Yavne. So when they went into this place, the study hall in Kerem b'Yavne, Ayasham Rabbi Yehuda, and Rabbi Yehuda was Rabbi Yehuda Rabbi Eloi. We'll see, he was one of the big rabbis at the time. Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Yossi, 2. Rabbi Shimon, we know, Stam Rabbi Shimon is Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. We're going to see that's important. And Nish ala she'ela zu b'fneim. This question was posed in front of the three rabbis, which was like this. Makazo, this askara, mipnei ma matchelet bebnei me'ayim v'gomeret b'peh. Why does it start inside of a person and then finishes off in his mouth? Why does it go in that? Why did Hashem set it up that way? So Na'ana Rabbi Yehuda Rabbi Eloi. Rabbi Yehuda Rabbi Eloi was the first one to answer because he was Rosh HaMidabrim b'chol makom. Rabbi Yehuda Rabbi Eloi was the head speaker, the first speaker in every place.
It was the pair with the Rabbi Shimon, or they used to have a lot of arguments.
So we'll see. Hold on. Rabbi Yehuda Rabbi Eloi was the first one to speak b'chol makom. We'll see why later in the Gemara the Romans actually put him as the first speaker b'chol makom. I heard once my father, he said over from Rav Ruderman of Ner Yisrael, he said over that he was Rosh HaMidabrim because we know Rabbi Yehuda also is the one who always says the short form. The Tzach Hadash Ba'achav. The first one to speak, you want the short speaker. But the Gemara here is going to say a different pshat. The Gemara is going to say, he said something the Romans appreciated, so they established he could be the first one to speak B'chol Makom. So he was the first one to answer this question, and he seemed to hold that it was because of Lashon Hara that you get Askara. So he said, Afal pi sheklayot yoatzot, even though the kidneys give advice, the lev mevin, the heart understands, v'lashon mechatech, and the tongue says, it determines what's going to be said, but peg omer, nonetheless, the tongue is what ultimately says Lashon Hara. So therefore what he was saying was, the Lashon Hara begins inside, and then it comes up to the tongue, so therefore, midah keneged midah, it makes sense that the punishment associated of Askara should be the same. Na'an Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Yossi. V'amar Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Yossi said a different answer. He said, why is it again that it starts inside and then ends with the tongue? Mipnei she'ochlin ba dvarim tme'in. Because with the tongue the person eats dvarim tme'in. Now the Gemara doesn't understand for a second. Dvarim tme'im salka da'atach. Now dvarim tme'im, that can't be the pshat because it is asur to eat food that's tameh, right? Not kosher, let's say, but there's not a mitah associated with it. So why would it be? It's isur malkot, it's a lav, but why would askara come for such a thing? So Ella, the Gemara says what Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Yossi means to say is shochlin ba dvarim she'enan mitukanim, is the person who eats dvarim she'enan mitukanim, which means tevel, he eats produce that didn't have Shumot and Maasrot taken off, where there's mitabidei shamayim associated with that. That's where askara could come. Now, this is going to be the proof, by the way, because Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Yossi before is the one who said it's because of lashon hara, and here he says it's because of the issue with Maasrot. So we see he was being mosif on the Tanna Kama, not being cholek. We'll get back to that in a minute. Now, Rabbi Shimon was the third one. And he said, "Va'amar ba'avon bitul Torah." He says, what causes askara? It's the sin of bitul Torah. Very interesting, because what would be the midah keneged midah? There is a midah associated with it. Rashi explains, because we know it says in the pasuk, "Ulamadetem," you shall learn Torah, and then it says afterwards, it says, "Leman yirbu yemechem b'mei v'nechem." So the way Rashi explains is that we're doresh lefanav v'lefnei fanav, and the way we understand it is, if you're learning Torah, you have long life. If you don't learn Torah, chas v'shalom, so then it causes short life. Askara could come.
But only lomed or also mekayem, because we spoke about this. We spoke about this avrech.
Well, that's a chilek.
Met bechatzi ama for learning Torah, such a talmid chacham.
A chilek of learning is to perform. L'lmod al menat l'lamed la'asod l'shmo, right? All those things. So the other chachamim turned to Rishon Bar Yochai and they said to him, "We can't accept your pshat. Why? Because Amud, they said to Rishon Bar Yochai, Amud lo nashim yochichu. Women are not mechuyav in Talmud Torah, and yet women could also get askara. So what you're saying is, how you're saying that they get askara comes because of bitlut Torah, but women aren't mechuyav in Torah. And what?
But the same thing is said b'may zachian.
Says the Gemara. So he says back, "Shemivatlot et ba'aleyan." Chas v'shem, be very careful about this. Matan, he's lucky. His wife pushes him to come learn. The opposite. But you hear what the Reb Shimon said back is, yeah, maybe they're not being mevatel their own Torah, but what's their Torah? When their husbands are learning. So if chas v'shalom, they're mevatel their husbands from learning.
So they mevatel their own Torah.
Their own Torah, exactly. Unbelievable. So the Gemara says,
basically.
Imagine. So the Chachamim said back to Rishon, Nachim yochichu, but Goyim can also get askara. They don't have a chiyuv of Torah, Talmud Torah. So Rishon said back, Shemevatin et Israel. No, if they're mevatel the Jewish people from learning Torah, they get askara. It goes the same. So the Gemara says, they said,
why they have no chiyuv lilmod Torah?
For themselves, but Jews do. So if they're making problems for the Jews, and then the Jews can't learn Torah, they're going to get askara. Yeah.
כל מי שגורר לביטול תורה בעקיפין אפילו הוא חייב.
Right.
כאילו ביטל את התורה בעצמו.
So the Gemara says, Tinokot yochichu, little children. They're not mechuyav in Talmud Torah.
Rashi said beautiful.
Unbelievable. So the Gemara says, Shemevatlin et avihen, chas v'shalom. It's an unbelievable thing. You see how severe it is. Bitul Torah. It's not just the guy who's not learning, it's all the causes around him.
Wow, look what
So the Gemara says, one second before that, Tinokot shabet rabban yochichu. So they said to Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, I don't understand, but what about the school children who are learning Torah? There's the school children, the yeshiva boys, the young children who are sitting and learning Torah, and yet we see they die with askara.
לא בעוון אביהם.
What's the pshat? So the Gemara says, the Gemara answered, Rabbi Shimon said, Hatam ked Rav Goryon, the Amar Rabbi Goryon, b'item Rav Yosef, Rabbi Shemaya. But what's the pshat? Bizman shat tzadikim bedor. Pshat's like this: if there's a punishment that needs to come to the generation, if there's tzadikim in that generation, so tzadikim nitvasim al ador. Sometimes it happens that the tzadikim, the leaders of the generation, will get punishment. They'll have to take punishment because of the sins of the generation. But ein tzadikim bedor, says the Gemara, a very scary thing. If there's no righteous leaders in the generation, Tinokot shabet rabban nitvasim al hador. The young school children who are learning Torah, they could take the brunt of the punishment and they get askara. Unbelievable, yeah. So the Gemara says, and Rashi, the Gemara is about to explain based on a pasuk actually, but this is an incredible thing, is that those Tinokot Shabbat Rabban, it must be, they're so great and their schuyot, they're so powerful because they're the exchange for the tzaddikim. It's unbelievable. Amud Yitzchak bar Zeiri ve'amar la'amar b'Shimon ben Nezira Maikra. Where do we find the pasuk that highlights this idea? Tzaddikim, and then if there's no tzaddikim, it's Tinokot Shabbat Rabban. So it's in Shir HaShirim. It says like this. It says, "Im lo ted'i lach hayafa banashim."
It's a little bit hard.
Let me just finish 1 second. If you don't know where to go, the beautiful of the women, tze'i lach be'ikvei atzon ve'gomer. Follow the steps of the sheep, etc. Now, it's kedai to see the whole pasuk, but let's just finish the drasha and we'll go through it well. So the pasuk says like this. Let me just read the full pasuk. It says like this. It's in Shir HaShirim, Aleph Chet. It says, Im lo ted'i lach hayafa banashim. But let's get it, 1 second, let's understand it. If you don't know, if you, the beautiful of the women, don't know where to go, tze'i lach be'ikvei atzon. Follow the steps of the sheep, ure'i et gidiotayich, and allow your kid goats, to graze, to eat, al mishkenot haroim, in the place that the shepherds are living. That's the simple pshat in the pasuk. But the way we're going to expound, Rashi explains it, we'll go through Rashi in a minute, is like this. If you don't know the mitzvot, the generation is lacking, so follow in the ways of the tzon. Rashi says that's avotenu akdoshim. And do tefillah, pray to Hashem. Why should you pray to Hashem? Ure'iyat gidiotayich, because then you'll keep your children alive. That's the gidiotayich, because the gidiotayich are the tinokot shel beit rabban. Pray for them that they don't have to die, because your prayers could prevent them from dying because of the sins of the generation. Al mishkenot haroim. Otherwise, they could be mashkon, the exchange for the shepherds. What do you mean the exchange? Is if there's no tzaddikim, the exchange for them could chas v'shalom be the tinokot shel beit rabban. Let's read that inside. V'amrinan gediyim hamemushkanin al haroim. That's what it means. The kids, the kid goats that are the exchange or the collateral for the shepherds. So the Gemara says is that's why they would end up dying. Now, we just finished off. The point we brought this whole story is Shma Mina Af al Lashon Hara Namika Amar Shma Mina. Rabbi Yossi, when he said this idea of Lashon Hara, it wasn't Cholek on Tanakama, because you see here clearly in this Braita we said that he was saying the Avera causes Askara is eating Tevel. So you see he was being Mosif and not arguing. But Rashi explains that's the point of that last step, is that those children could be grabbed, could be held accountable because of the sins of the generation. What do you want to say, Yochai?
What's the Rashi said that Tinokot Yochichu She'enan Bnei Limud. Okay, I understand.
Yeah.
But then he said that She'enan Bnei Limud Amar Lahen Afen Be'avon She'mvatlim Et Avien.
Right.
They cause to the father and said what? She'leolichan lachama ve'latzonel l'faisan be'egozim. But this is the kids. This is the nature of the kids. The kids, what do you expect for the kids? To be like Talmid Chacham? Why the kids get punished from that?
Maybe when they say to the Tinokot, it's different translation.
What does that mean? Leholichan lechama
לקחת אותם ללחום, לקור, לאגוזים. אבל זה ילד, מה רוצה ילד? רוצה לשחק, רוצה לזה, רוצה להשתעשע, רוצה אגוזים, רוצה מרצה.
אז תשלח אותו לקמפ, I don't know.
אבל זה שאלה, איך זה שהילד...
אולי זה ילד שעושה בעיות שגורם לאבא שלו לקחת אותו
אבל זה ילד, מה הנצ'ר של ילד מהו? ילד רוצה לשחק, רוצה לאכול, רוצה אגוזים, רוצה מתקין. למה הוא, עד כדי כך משלם זה שחולה בזה? אם בן אדם מבוגר או אישה שהיא ברדעת, מבטלת את בעלה, מריצה אותו, מטרטר אותו סתם, תביא לי פה, תביא לי, בסדר, אני מבין, בסדר, נכון. אבל ינקות של בית רבן שלא חטאו, שהם במקום הצדיקים, מובן. אבל ילד? איך באים בטרוניה לילד שהוא מבקש מה שהילד רוצה, מה שהנצ'ר שלי זה ילד?
Like you cannot actually charge a child for crime. You have no doubt.
לא, הוא לא עשה פה קריים גם, זה לא נקודה.
יכול להיות, maybe you see the severity of ביטול תורה, how powerful is ביטול תורה.
כן, אבל הקדוש ברוך הוא לא... אין סתם, נכון, אבל אם הקדוש ברוך הוא מעניש,
meaning what I'm saying is it's not onesh, it's midah kineged midah. However we understand it, Bitul Torah is so powerful, it's such a severe thing, that the reality is, if there's Bitul Torah, there's going to be askeva. It's not a punishment, Hashem's upset, it's just the natural reality. It's like midah kineged midah teva. If someone walks in the street, they get hit by a car. So the natural reality is, if there's Bitul Torah, there's going to be this onesh. I guess that's what you have to say. I hear you. It's a hard concept.
Nashim understand.
Even Tinokot Shebet Rabban is also difficult. It's very hard.
The substitute of the tzaddikim.
But I want to point out, you see that Rashi, what he says something, this idea of Imloteid I, you see this, he says something about tefillah, that what's so important. You see this Rashi? Look at this Rashi. It's kedai to see this, the big lesson. Meaning, so the way he understands is, if you don't know how to keep the Torah, you don't know, whatever. As tzilach ubikshirach amin b'schut ikvei atzon. Avot harishonim. In the merit of zchut avot, shayu raglei atzon v'chizukam. Urei b'schutan. And in their merit, you should cause to graze or keep alive et gediotaich tinokot shelach. Shelo yitpesu al mishkenot haroim ro'ei ador upanasav. Meaning, in the schut of Avotenu Akdoshim, you should ask mercy from Hashem that the children survive.
But it's very hard concept, Rabbi.
Very hard concept. This whole idea of little children dying is a very hard concept.
It makes sense to me, כמו שבית רבן הם הצדיקים. פה טהור שלא חטא, אין בהם חטא ולא עוון. הם משלמים את הפרייס אם אין צדיק לקחת. מובן, אבל ילדים, אני חושב אולי אפשר להגיד, מה רש"י אומר? רש"י אומר שהם לוקחים את האבא שלהם, they keep them busy by what? לוקחים לחמה ולצונן לפייסן בגוזים. אולי האבא בעצמו יש לו בעיה, שהוא לא יתפלל, שתהיה לו סייעתא דשמיא עם הזמן שלו. אז מה קורה? יש לו ילדים שכל הם מטרטרים אותו לקחת, להביא. זה ילד, אבל בכל זאת, גם עם הילד תצטרך להתפלל, שיהיה זמן גם קצוב עם ילד, שלא כל היום אתה רץ איתו.
That's a good answer.
כאילו...
אבל לא, אבל תסתכל מה הוא מסביר לך בשוטנשטיין, בקושי האחרונה, תינוקות של בית רבן.
כן.
קטנים שכבר לומדים לפני מלמדם, ומתים מהסתר, הוכיחו שאינה באה בעוון ביטול תורה. אוקיי, זה לא בגלל זה, שאינה...
לא, זה על הילדים הצדיק של בית רבן, בגלל שאין צדיק לקחת.
Yochai is just asking is, the little children, that's just their nature to bother their father while he's trying to learn Torah. So why would they die because of Bitul Torah? It's a very nice answer that you're saying is, the father should set aside time to spend time with his kids, not when he's learning Torah. No. But I don't know if it answers the question fully, because that's the father's fault, not the kid's fault.
Any time that he's not going to be with the kids is because
however Torah. You're going to answer it, it still goes back to the question.
I think so, because ילד, גם ילד, even a child, שיש לו קשר טוב and a good relationship with the father, he wanted time to sit and learn. He loved this time.
Who?
Even child, little child.
Yeah.
She have good relationship with their father, with his father. He really enjoy learn with his father.
But again, who makes that good relationship?
The father.
So why is the kid responsible?
So, because of the father, that he have put the time and the effort to build the relationship with his child, to sit and learn, so that what the child do? All they take him back and forth. So as זה שהילד נענש, זה באמת עונש לאבא. It's really the father punishment.
I hear.
אתה מבין? זה לא ממש כי... אבל הילד הוא... חס ושלום כמו שאבא חוטא, ילדים משלמים מחיר. He pay for his kids, לא עלינו, בר מינן.
Yalla, let's go. I hear. It's very hard idea, but I hear what you're saying. So you're saying it's an achayat on the father to find time to spend time outside of... Not learning, just to spend time with his kid.
No doubt.
Beautiful idea.
ולעשות גם את הילד, שיהיה לו גם...
Maybe the mitzvah of the chinuch, of the father to the kid.
Yeah, that's what he's saying. Because otherwise the kid's going to take him away from learning.
כל היום לרוץ לו בשטויות משחקים. הילד כל היום רוצה לתפוס את אבא שלו במה? חמה, קרה, צונים, מגוזים, מתקים. אורלנדו, בוא ניסה, והוא kill the time of the father.
Yalla Chevra, we have a big story coming up now. Now this is the famous story of Shifman by Yochai in the Ma'ara. Traditionally, b'Mesorah, we know that he wrote Zohar, some say over here. It's big stuff over here. Says the Gemara, "V'amai karule." This is really a new topic. "V'amai karule rosh hamidabrim b'chol makom." Why was Rabbi Yehuda Rabbi Loi called rosh hamidabrim b'chol makom? So the Gemara answers like this: there was a story that happened as follows: the Yatvi Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Shimon. These three great rabbis were sitting. The Yativ Yehuda ben Gerim Gabayu, and there was a fourth fellow there named Yehuda ben Gerim. He was called Yehuda ben Gerim because his parents were both Gerim. Okay? So Patach Rabbi Yehuda v'amar. Rabbi Yehuda Rabbi Loi started off and he said the following: V'amar kama na'im ma'asein shel umazo. How beautiful are the actions of this nation. He was not talking about the Yehudim. He was talking about the Romans. The Romans were the ones in charge at the time. And Rabbi Loi said, look how beautiful the Romans are. This is the end of Bayit Sheni. Well, it's very interesting why he felt the need to do this. But look what he says. Tiknu shvakim, they built for us markets. Tiknu gsharim, they built bridges. Tiknu merchatzaot, they built bathhouses. They built all kinds of wonderful infrastructure. Wonderful. Rabbi Yossi shatak. Now Rabbi Yossi, he didn't say good, he didn't say bad. He just kept quiet. It's quiet. But Na'ana Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai answered, V'amar, and he said, Kol ma shetiknu lo tiknu el letzorech atzman. He said, whatever they built was only for themselves. They don't get any credit for it. Why? Tiknu shvakin lehoshiv bahen zonot. They built marketplaces.
But also to sell mezonot, right?
What? No. This means prostitutes. This is prostitutes, meaning they built shvakin in order to have batei zonot there, houses of prostitution. Merchatzaot, they built bathhouses, laden bain atzman, to enjoy themselves. Ksharim, they built bridges, litol me'en meches, to take taxes. So says Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai to the Chevra there, they don't get any credit. It's very interesting. Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai felt the need to point out the obvious, but it was all for their own sake. Alach Yehuda ben Gerim. Now remember, the fourth guy there was Yehuda ben Gerim. He went, v'siper divreihem, he spoke about this conversation, v'nishmeu lemalchut. And the government, the Romans, heard about it. Now, Rashi learns over here. Hold on. It's not chas v'shalom. It's actually a major machloket here. What happened? Rashi learns this Yehuda ben Gerim was not a bad guy. This Yehuda ben Gerim, Tosfot actually says he was a Gavra Rabbi. He was a great person. He spoke about the conversation with his students or his family, just telling them what this conversation, and the word spread to the Romans. Now, we're going to see later in the story, he was punished, which the Chavetz Chaim points out is because he shouldn't have spoken about his Lashon Hara. Okay. He shouldn't have told over this conversation. But the way that these Rishonim, Rashi, Tosfot seem to learn is, it wasn't that he was Moser L'Malchut. Other Rishonim seem to hold actually that he was a bad guy. But Rashi and Tosfot don't seem to learn that way.
Anyway, the outcome is very bad.
The outcome is going to be very bad, but he didn't do it b'kavanah. That's how Rashi and Tosfot learn.
But where is the logic if he's a Gavra Rabba?
He made a mistake. He's okay. It's easier to say he made a mistake than he was Moser L'Malchut. That's the worst thing. Those guys burning Gehenim forever. It's a different story. It's a different level. Exactly. If he was a Masor, it'd be different.
החפץ חיים מביא את זה בהלכות לשון הרע על יהודה בן גרים. מביא את זה שהוא דיבר, הנה הדיבור שלו על השולחן, תראה איזה נזק גרם. למה סיפרת את זה? למה עברת את זה? במיוחד שההלכות אומר, אם מישהו אומר דבר כזה, ואם הוא לא אומר, ואם הוא לא נותן לך okay to say that, you're not allowed to say that.
שאומר פבול שונו.
זה כמו גילה סוד, והוא ידע שהוא דיבר דבר גנות על המלכות. על מלכות קיסר, איך אתה אומר את זה?
Rashi even learns more. He learns, he was speaking to his students. Maybe he felt, this is a limud, I need to teach my students.
הוא דיבר את זה בבית.
But no, but that's what Rashi says, is to his students or to his parents. Maybe he felt there was a limud here. I need to teach them what the Chachamim were talking about. See, there was a limud. That was a mistake, though. Meaning, even if there's a limud, you have to be careful. If you're telling over what happened, you have to be very careful. That's the point. Even if you think there's a limud, be careful. So what happened? The government heard about it, and Amr, the government, the Romans said the following. Look, there were three people here. Yehuda she'ila yitaleh. Yehuda Rabbi Loi.
Oh, they made him the speaker because
made him Rosh HaMidabrim. They said he praised us. He should be elevated. This is every government we lived in. Every government, it's always like this. The Yehuda Rabbi Loi, who praised us, he should be put up. He's Rosh HaMidabrim. Yossi sheshatak. Yossi was quiet. So Yiglel Tzipori. So we're not going to punish him, like kill him or something, but he has to be exiled to Tzipori. And Rabbi Yossi was sent to Tzipori. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai shegina, but he spoke negative against the government. Yareg, he is mechuyav to be killed. So Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai heard this business and he had to run away. So Azalhu Ubrei, him and his son Rabbi Elazar went Tashu Beit Midrash, and they hid in the Beit Midrash. This is before. First thing is, they said, we're going to go hide in a Beit Midrash somewhere. They probably went to a Beit Midrash somewhere else, hid over there, we're studying Torah, but away from the Malchut, they couldn't catch them. They were hidden. So every day, the wife of Rabbi Shimon, the mother of Elazar, used to bring them bread and a jug of water, and they would eat. When the decree became stronger, meaning that they were pursuing Rabbi Shimon and Rabbi Elazar, trying to find them, and they were nervous they were going to be found. So Amar Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai said to his son Rabbi Elazar, he said, look, Nashim da'atan kala aleihen, women, literally it means they're Rabbi Shimon said to his son, Nashim da'atan kalot aleihen. What does it mean? It means literally means their intellect is light on them. What it means is that they could be swayed, they could be pushed in a direction. Dilma mitzarila, maybe they will torture my wife, your mother, or megalyalan, and then she'll reveal to them where we are. That's a good calculation, by the way. He's putting his wife in danger because maybe she'll be taken in and they'll torture her, and then she'll say, okay, that's where they are. So Azlu Tashu B'Marta, they went and they hid themselves somewhere else in a cave away from the mother, distanced. So what happened over there? Itrachesh Nisa, famous story. A miracle happened. Ivrilu Charuva, a carob tree produced. We know a carob tree, we learned, it takes 70 years to grow, but this happened right away, a miracle. Ve'ena Damaya, and a stream of water. So they had food, they had water, obviously very basic, but that's what they had. Now what they used to do is they would take off their clothing, and they would sit in the sand up to their necks all day learning Torah. But be'idan seluye, when they would come to the time of tefillah, lavshu michsu, they would put it on and cover themselves, umatzlu, and they would daven. And then they would take off their clothing, go back in the sand, so their clothing should not become worn out. So they did this apparently because they didn't want their clothing to become worn out. It's a very interesting cheshbon exactly, but the point is, this is what they did for a long time. They spent 12 years in that cave. It sounds like they didn't know if the decree was still existent, not existent. They stayed there for 12 years. And like I said, in Masorah, we know this is when Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai wrote the Zohar, which, by the way, it's not so simple. I just want to point out. Apparently, some people say certain parts of the Zohar were not written by Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. It's not so pashut. But apparently, traditionally, we say this is when Zohar was written by Rabbi Shimon. Okay, so what happened? Ata Eliyahu, so after 12 years, Eliyahu and Avi came, he stood at the entrance of the cave, Amar, and he said, Man lo de'ele Bar Yochai, who's going to tell Bar Yochai, Demit Kesar ubatil gezerte, that the Kesar has died, the Caesar has died, and his decree is gone, meaning you could leave. That's what he was saying. Fine. So nafku. So what happened was you have these two massive Talmidei Chachamim who've been learning Torah by themselves in a cave for 12 years, and they're literally on the level of Malachei HaSharet. This is not in this world. They don't exist in the normal world in any way. Nafku chazu inshi de karvi vizari. They saw a person people who were plowing and planting, meaning they're being involved in Olam Hazeh.
What is nafku?
They went out and they saw these people, chazu inshi de karvi is choshim, and zari, they were planting. People were doing the business, doing what they needed to do. Amar, so the Chachamim said, Manichin Chayei Olam, they're leaving aside the world to come, V'oskin b'chai sha'ah, and they're involved in this world, Kol makom shenotnin enehem, wherever they would look, miyad nisraf, it would be burnt immediately, because there was they were literally, like we say, Kol tamid chacham she'eno kashe kebarzel, she'eno ke'esh, so they were on, but there was even more, they were like malachim, they look anywhere, they couldn't deal with it, that was something beyond them.
Wow.
Rashi says something very interesting because he says, what was their taina? De'efshar al yedei nochrim, v'akadosh baruch hu mechalek mazon v'revach lo'oseh retzono. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai was such a level. He says, Goyim will take care of them. They're not going to make money, so others will work and they'll be able to be taken care of. Now the problem with that is maybe Rabbi Shimon or Rabbi Lazar is such a level. But Hamonam, the rest of the world, that's the Gemara in Brachot. We learned it. They're not on that level, but they couldn't deal with it. They were on such a level. So Yatzda bat kol came out when this happened. V'amar lahen, and said to these two great tzaddikim, La'achariv olami yatzatem, you left the cave to destroy my world. Chizru lema'aratchem, go back to your cave. What does it mean? You need time to adjust.
Wow.
You need time to be karagil, to be a normal person.
Moshe Rabbeinu came down from the Shamayim after 40 days.
Yeah.
And he Karan or Panav. They were so scared of him, like no one could stand with the Kedusha L'Diela.
So they said, you need to go back and you need to adjust. Means you have to figure out how to adjust to this world, go back to the cave. They went back into the cave. They stayed there for another 12 months, meaning another year. They stayed for one more year. Amri, and they calculated the following. Mishpat Risha'im begenom Yud Bet Chodesh. We know after 120, normal people, it's 11 months in Gehenom. Risha'im, 12 months. So even for Risha'im in Gehenom, the kapara they achieve is 12 months, right? So for us that we need this adjustment period, it shouldn't be more than 12 months. It should be at 12 months, you say. So Yatzda bat kol v'amra.
That's for finally,
I think they're saying we know Hashem was telling us we need an adjustment, so shouldn't be worse.
Worst case scenario, 12 months, no more than that.
Shouldn't be more than that.
We're ready to go out.
Right. So finally, at the end of 12 months, Yatzda bat kol v'amra tze'u mimaratchem, leave your cave. Now you could leave already. Now we're going to see in a minute, Rabbi Shimon was adjusted. Rabbi Lazar's son was still not so adjusted. We'll see. So Nafku, they went out. Whatever Rabbi Lazar would destroy, meaning Rabbi Lazar was still not adjusted, and he would look and he would destroy it. So whatever Rabbi Lazar would destroy, Havamasi Rabbi Shimon. Rabbi Shimon would fix. Meaning Rabbi Shimon was fixing up the destruction of his son. Yeah. You know, we think you go to tzaddikim, they could see through you. But imagine this, literally, look at you and like that. Crazy. So Amar Lo. So Rabbi Shimon turned to his son and he said, you have to calm down. Why do you have to calm down? We can't hold everyone else to such a high level. We could hold ourselves to a high level, but not the rest of the world. Amar Lo b'ni dai lo lam ani v'ata. It's enough for the world that I and you are osek b'Torah on such a level. We cannot expect that of the rest of the world. The rest of the world, they have business, they have to do what they need to do. We can't expect that of them. The Gemara tells us now a story that happened. Bahade Panyadam Ali Shabbat. It was the evening as it was getting dark. Erev Shabbat. So they saw a certain older person who was running with two bundles of hadas. Hadas has a good smell. Ben Hashmashot, right before Shabbat. So Amud, they said to him, Hani la Melecha, what are you doing with these? So Amud said to them, L'chvod Shabbat. Rashi learns as they wanted to put fragrance in his house. It's a good smell. So the Gemara says they turned back to the Saba and they said, "V'tiski lecha b'chad." Just why do you need two? It should be enough to have one. So he said back, "Chad keneged zacho, v'chad keneged shamor." Beautiful answer. One is for zacho and one is for shamor. The two aspects of Shabbat. So Amar lei lebrei Rabbi Shimon. But there's two elements. Amar lei Rabbi Shimon said to Rabbi Lazar lebrei chazi kama chavivin mitzvot Yisrael. Look how much the Jews are loving the mitzvot. They want to put a zecher for zachor, for shamor in the house of Shabbat. So the Gemara tells us, Yativ da'atayu, they were both calmed down. That made them feel comfortable. You see, the Jews are really chavivin et mitzvot. Very interesting. It means they're not osek b'Torah like our level, but they're chavivin et mitzvot. That already is a madrega.
Amazing how he balanced them.
Balanced them, huh?
Show them the beauty of the Jewish people.
Right.
Look, it's old man holding at the sifos, shamor v'zachor. Things that it's not by halacha, but you love the mitzvot. So this is let them understand. Yes, they're not in our level. They're not skilled בתורה. They're עובדים ועמלים וזורים, אבל אוהבים את המצוות. תירגע.
Beautiful. Now the Gemara continues now, following this story. So imagine that after 13 years, Rabbi Shimon reappears. Meaning 13 years he was missing, and now he reappears.
That basically he rocketed himself.
He became a malach. Yes, but the point is, imagine that for a second. The Gadol Ador disappears, and 13 years later he resurfaces. Nobody knows, right? So Rabbi Pinchas ben Yair, the Gemara here says he was the son-in-law of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. I saw other mefarshim say, based on other, he was actually the father-in-law of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai.
They went to the Kinneret.
So they changed the Girsa here, but the Gemara here says he was the son-in-law of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. So Shamar Rabbi Pinchas ben Yair Chataneh. Rabbi Shimon ben Yair, the son-in-law of Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai, heard. V'nafak la'peh, he came to greet him. Imagine that, after so many years, he sees his father-in-law. Aili lebeibani, he took Rabbi Shimon to the bathhouse. Imagine, he needs a bath after so many years in the sand. The problem is, so he was massaging Rabbi Shimon's skin. His skin was so dried out and broken from all those years in the sand. He saw that Rabbi Shimon had cracks in his skin. It was cracks, broken, dry. Havakabachi, so Rabbi Pinchas ben Yair was crying because of how damaged Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai looked. So the tears of Rabbi Pinchas ben Yair went into the cracks of the skin of Rabbi Shimon, and it caused him to scream. The salt went into his flesh, and it caused him to scream. So Rabbi Pinchas ben Yair said, "Woe to me that I see you in such a damaged state. It's so sad for me." So Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai said back, "You're fortunate you see me like this. Because how did I become like this? Through Talmud Torah, for the whole thing." What did he say? Because if you wouldn't see me like this, lo matzata bikach, you wouldn't find me like this. You wouldn't find me having become such a gadol b'Torah. And he said, how do I know? Because before I went into the cave, when I would ask a question, you would say 12 answers for my question. Apparently, originally, Pinchas ben Yair was greater in a certain way. Lesof, in the end, when you ask a question, I say 24 answers to you. And he says, look what happened in these 13 years. I became such a gadol b'Torah. All of that suffering, that was a step in order to accomplish that. It's the Gemara. It's everyone. But the Torah tells us, Gemara tells us, meaning the point is that Divrei Torah, part of it is that suffering. It's something. As Rabbi Shimon says, Baruch Hashem, that's what it is. Baruch Hashem.
There's many great rabbis that mention, many. I heard from the Rabbi Krasinyansky said that their Sfarim, you see a big difference. He said, this is great sefer, was such a pain and tsar. Look what happened. When you get more revach, more parnasa, more זה לא Torah.
Wow.
He mentioned many times in the shiurim. שבאדם בצער ולומד תורה, התורה שלו...
לב נשבר ונתקה אלוקים.
מתעלה מאוד, התורה שלו באה בצורה...
עמלות. It's amazing. Says the Gemara, Amar Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai said the following. He said a very interesting cheshbon. He said, since a miracle happened for me, I was saved in this miraculous way, Ezil atkin milta. I want to do a tikkun for the community. I want to do something good for the community. Where do we know this idea from? Yaakov Avinu. What happened? We know after Yaakov met with Malach Shel Esav and Esav, and he was saved, it says, Vayavo Yaakov Shalem. He came to this place which was near Shechem, and he came Shalem. Rav says, Shalem begufo, means he was healed from the injury the Yisar Shel Esav gave him. Shalem b'mamono, even though he gave so much money to Esav, he was still complete in his money. And Shalem b'torato, Rashi says, he didn't forget his Torah from all the travel. So what did he do? It was a miracle. He was Shalem in all these ways. Vayichan et pnei ha'ir, it says he dwelled, Yichan is Lashon Chanaya, means he dwelled at the entrance of the city, which is Shechem. So Amar Rav says Vayichan, Rashi says two pshatim. Either it means Vayichan is Lashon Chen, he did something good for the city, or it's Lashon Vayiken, he was mitaken something for the city. So what did he fix up for Shechem? Amar Rav, matbea tiken lem. So Rav says Yaakov Avinu established a coinage for the city. What does it mean? It means in order to be a significant city or country, you have to have your own currency. Like in Israel, you have a shekel. In America, you have dollar. You don't have it, it's not chashuv. So he established a currency for Shechem. He wanted to do a tikkun for the place. Shmuel Amar Shvakim Tiken, he built marketplaces. Yochanan Amar Merchatzaot Tiken, he built bathhouses for them.
So he did everything?
It's very interesting, a different shitot. But the point is, you see Yaakov Avinu held, if a miracle happened to me, I came Shalem and I'm complete, Hashem saved me, I want to do a tikkun for the tzibur. That's what he was telling them.
With the
So it's very interesting. It is parallel. Where the Romans, Rav Shimon bar Yochai was the one who said that they did it latzmam, Yaakov Avinu did it for whoever, for the tzibur. It is a chiluk. It's very interesting. And Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai says, I want to do something now for the tzibur.
עשה את זה פה, גם זה לא, עשה את זה לשכם, מקום של גויים.
Exactly. Amazing thing, yeah.
מה העניין?
So I saw one of the pshatim brought down at the bottom, the RSbY quotes over there. It's very interesting. He says, we know that Yaakov Avinu was nervous that he had lost his chuyot. Katonti mikol hachasadim. So when you go through a miraculous thing, it could use up your schuyot. But if afterwards you benefit the tzibur,
you receive the schuyot back?
So either you receive the schuyot back, you could say it that way, but I was thinking a little bit different. Maybe it makes it that all of the miracles that happened for you weren't only for you, really. Because really now it's to benefit the tzibur.
It's basically for...
So therefore you won't have your schuyot taken away, meaning you're using the good thing that happened to you for the merit of mizakeret tzibur. Maybe it won't be menakem mischuyotav. Either way you look at it, there's an inyan like this.
So it's basically, it's just like a process to get to the final destination.
I was thinking, such an idea, you could say such a pshat like that, yeah. So Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai said, I want to do something for the tzibur. So he went over to the leaders of the place, wherever it was, and Amar, he said, Ika milta debaylet kuni, is there anything that I could do to help the tzibur? So Amar lay, the people there said to Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, Ika duchta deitbe safek tum'ah. They said to Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, there is a place where there's a safek tum'ah. Rashi explains, we'll see in a minute.
But this is nogea to the Jewish people, by the way.
It's nogea to the Jewish people,
so
yes.
You see, it's different between Yaakov Avinu.
Correct.
And what happened in Shechem?
Bad things. I hear. It's very interesting. I hear.
רבי שמעון פה עשה תקנה לעם ישראל. בעיר טבריה. גילה להם איפה המקומות שזה, והכהנים יכלו ללכת. לא ידעו מה לעשות שם.
So meaning the problem was like this. The Kohanim, it's a bother for them to go around. Rashi explains there was a central area. It was like a major thoroughfare.
A cemetery? Tuma?
So it wasn't. But meaning the point was there was like, imagine Alton Road, a main area, and the Kohanim wanted to travel through there. The problem was there was a safek tum'ah. There might be bodies there they didn't know, so Kohanim always had to go around. And this was a big bother. So maybe you could figure this out. Now, the Mefarshim explain, I just want to point out, is it wasn't that they knew there were bodies there. What happened was, originally, as we're about to see, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai was able to figure out, originally it was tahor. They may have put bodies there temporarily to take them later and put them elsewhere, and they might have forgotten those bodies there. They don't know. So that was the safek tum'ah. So Amar, so Shimon Bar Yochai said, is there anyone here who knows that originally there was cheskat tahara? Meaning to say is there anyone here who's an old-timer, who knows that once upon a time this area was for sure tahor? So Amar le'ahu Sabas, a certain old person there said, Kan kitzetz ben zakai tumasi truma. So masei truma. So he said, I know, traditionally I remember that Yochanan ben Zakkai, who was a Kohen, he used to cut here tomasei truma. It's a certain type of like a bean or a lentil.
It's
lupine, it's called in English. But
yeah,
he used to cut it off the ground. Means he would take truma, he would plant it here, and then he would harvest it from here.
If he was there as a Kohen,
it's truma, and he's a Kohen. So obviously this area was tahor. That's the point. So Yochanan ben Zakkai understood the general area has cheskat tahara. Means if the guy would have said no, so then he wouldn't be able to do what he's about to do.
כי זה היה סמנטרי ואסור לפנות המתים.
Exactly.
אבל אם היה קצת פה, אפשר להסתדר.
Okay, so Yochai's being mosif is that you're not allowed to move the bodies if it's a cemetery.
זה מה שהוא אומר פה, זה מה שהוא אומר. למה שאל אותו? אם זה היה ממש, שזה סמנטרי, זה אין מה לעשות. אבל אם זה היה משהו
That's what Rashi says, right? Lo nitan lefanoto, you're not allowed to clean them out, remove them. So that's what he was going to do in a minute, in a miraculous way. So what happened? He figured out it wasn't a cemetery. Before, maybe a body was forgotten here. That's the point. So Avad iu nami hachi. So Rishon Bar Yochai did the same thing. Now Rashi here adds in a lot that the Gemara doesn't say. What did he do also? Rashi says he took these tormasin, like Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai did. He cut them up and he threw the seeds in the ground. This is what the Yerushalmi says. Look at Rashi. It's fascinating because the Gemara doesn't speak this out here. He cut up this tormasin, this vegetable, like a bean, and he threw the seeds there. A miracle happened. Meaning he didn't remove the bodies. I want to point this out. He did not remove the bodies. The body is like shook in its place, causing it to become clear that there's a body there. That's the point. And then he was able to mark off this area there's a kever, but the general area you could walk. You mark it off, you make it a separate place. And the Gemara continues and says like this, wherever there was hard earth, so tahare, he said it's pure, meaning the bodies didn't move around, so it didn't make the earth soft. He knew that area was tahor. And if it was a soft area, which means he understood that the bodies had come to the surface making it soft, so he marked it off. This is a place of a body, but then they could walk through the main area. That's what RSbY Bar Yochai was able to do. Wonderful. So he figured out that was a tikkun he did for the city. So Amar RSbY, and everyone is happy besides one person. There's always going to be somebody with a complaint. So RSbY, that old person, said, Tiher ben Yochai bet hakfarot, is that Ben Yochai, RSbY Bar Yochai, he purified a cemetery. Means he was saying, how could you do this? It's a bet hakfarot, and you're saying it's pure. Doesn't make sense. You can't do such a thing. Now he's talking about RSbY Bar Yochai. Obviously he could do it, but this was a
he did with the wrong
exactly. He's starting up with the wrong person.
Big mistake.
So Amar Les RSbY Bar Yochai
There was
said,
another story about it was so medakdek, like the person used to say vidui al Churban Yerushalayim, and it was his hilula. And they told him you can't do it because he's a tzaddik, whatever. And he was still mitabel until Rabbi Shimon get up and told him, since you're mitabel, lo ata. He was mitabel, and a week after his kids died or something.
Amar Les RSbY Bar Yochai said to this guy, he said like this, look, ilmale lo hayita imanu, if you wouldn't have been here, means if you wouldn't have been here when we went through the process of purifying the area, even if you would have been here, but you wouldn't have been involved in the process, nimnet is included or counted with us. It's okay what you're saying. Means if you wouldn't have been aware of what was going on, and even if you were, but you weren't involved in the process, so then you could disagree with it, fine. But now that you were with us, and you were agreeable to it, you told me where it is, you were involved in the process. So the problem is, this is going to create a bizuya Torah. Because what's going to happen? Yomu, people are going to say like this, zonot mefachesot zu et zu. Even zonot, prostitutes, they'll braid each other's hair. What does it mean? It means zonot, they're looking for customers, right? And they braid each other's hair. They don't fight with each other, they support each other. You'll get customers, I'll get customers, which I saw the Mefarshim speak out, because if all the zonot look good, so then it raises the price in the region. But Talmidei Chachamim lo kol sheken. People are going to say, Talmidei Chachamim for sure have to support each other. Once we start, RSbY Bar Yochai purified it, but the other Talmid Chacham there, he said, no, it's not acceptable. It's mevazet HaTorah.
היית איתי שבדקנו את זה, הסכמת איתי.
Right.
Now you announce publicly that I'm wrong.
Right. It's going to create bizuya Torah. That's what he was saying. You can't do this. You can't do this. By the way, it's very interesting because he's pointing out, if you weren't here, to be cholek, you're not here, okay, there's always cholkim. It's okay. You were here, and then you're going to say, nah, that's a problem. That's not good. He didn't know what he was starting up with. So the Gemara says, I looked at him, and the guy ended up dying, just like that. Now the Gemara finishes off the story. Nafak, they see, by the way, in the beginning it sounds like RSbY Bar Yochai couldn't control it. It was like he just looked at everyone and they died. Here, this guy was mechuyav. It ended up happening like that. Nafak l'shuka, another time RSbY Bar Yochai went out to the shuk. Chazia Yehuda ben Gerim. So he saw this fellow, Yehuda ben Gerim. He was the guy who originally had spoken and the Romans heard. Amar, and he said, Adayin yesh lazeh ba'olam. I can't believe you're still alive. Natan Boinav, he put his eyes on this guy, on this Yehuda ben Gerim, va'asau gal shel atzamot, and he became a pile of bones, meaning it's like he was a pile of bones, all the flesh was rotted off of it, he died there on the spot. Now Tosfot changes this girsa, it's very interesting. He says, it's not na'aseh lo gal shel atzamot, because that sounds like it would imply then that this Yehuda ben Gerim was a terrible person, like he was like a terrible onesh. Rather, the girsa should be nach nafsheh. Nach nafsheh is a little more pleasant. It's like he ended up dying. Okay, because he did something wrong. But gal shel atzamot would imply that he was an avarian in an obvious way, or like a direct way. So he wants to change the girsayir because.
But why was makpid on him so much?
That's the point. Is ultimately it seems like he did something wrong, but not that he was a moser chas v'shalom. That's the way the Rishonim, Tosfot and Rashi both explain over here. So in the end, he got what he was deserving to some degree, even though perhaps it wasn't that he was a Moser. There are other Rishonim that argue, but that's how simple pshat. All right, we'll stop here at the Mishnah. Towards the top of Lamed Aleph. B'ezrat Hashem, we'll start the new Mishnah tomorrow.
Wow.
Yom Tov, everybody.